My generous cousin gives me all her trash hand-me-downs like I am a charity case. She lost it in front of everyone when I started participating. It all started when my cousin Amber kept giving me her old stuff. Not just occasionally, but constantly. Every family gathering, she'd show up with garbage bags full of her rejects. Here, I cleaned out my closet again. You'll love these. The thing is, I never asked for them. I had a job at a marketing firm. I bought my own clothes. But Amber had this weird complex where she thought she was doing me this huge favor. She'd literally announce it to everyone at family dinners. I gave Jess all my old work clothes since she's still trying to build her wardrobe. My mom would beam at her generosity. My aunts would praise her for being so thoughtful. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there in my own purchased outfit that cost me half a paycheck, while everyone acts like I'm some charity case. The clothes weren't even good hand-me-downs. We're talking stretched-out sweaters with pills all over them, jeans with worn inner thighs that made a swoosh sound when you walked, shirts with deodorant stains that wouldn't wash out, and shoes with the soles separating from the bottom. But the worst part was how she'd comment every time she saw me. "Oh, you're wearing that blazer I gave you. It looks so much better on you than it did on me," even when I wasn't wearing her stuff. "That dress looks just like one I used to have. Did I give you that one too?" "No, Amber, I bought this yesterday at the mall." "Are you sure? It really looks like my old one." "Yes, I'm sure. I have the receipt." She started telling other relatives to give me their old stuff too. "Jess would love your old purses," she told my Aunt Diana. "Jess needs professional shoes," she told my other cousin. Soon I was drowning in everyone's garbage. My apartment looked like a discount thrift store. I tried telling her to stop. "Amber, I appreciate it, but I don't need more clothes." She'd wave me off. "Don't be silly. Why waste money when I have perfectly good things?" "They're not perfectly good, Amber. This sweater has a hole in the armpit." She'd inspect it like she was seeing it for the first time. "Oh, that's tiny. No one will notice." I was talking to my roommate about it, and she said something that clicked. If she thinks sharing clothes is so great, share hers. See how she likes it. So I did. At the next family barbecue at my uncle's house, Amber shows up in a new sundress from an expensive store. "Cute dress," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mind if I borrow it next weekend? I have a date." She laughed. "This? I just bought it. It was like $200. "Yeah, but we share clothes, right? You're always sharing yours with me." Her smile got tight. "Those are different. Those are ones I don't want anymore." "Oh, so we only share when it's convenient for you? Interesting." She tried to brush it off, but I wasn't done. At her birthday dinner at that Italian place downtown, she wore new heels. "Those are perfect for my work presentation," I said, reaching for them under the table. "Can I grab them on Tuesday?" She pulled her feet back. "Jess, these are literally brand new. I haven't even worn them out yet." "So? You gave me your old heels last month. The ones with the scraped heel and the broken buckle. I figured we had a shoe-sharing situation going. Family shares, right?" She started getting flustered. "That's not the same thing at all." "How is it not the same thing?" I asked. "Either we share clothes or we don't." "Which is it?" Her mom jumped in. "Now, Jess, Amber's just trying to help you out." "Really?" "Because I never asked for help. I have a credit card. I have a closet full of clothes I bought myself with my own money. But if we're doing this sharing thing, let's really do it." At the next family event, my grandmother's birthday, I showed up early and went straight to Amber's room. Her mom let me in, thinking nothing of it. "Oh, you're here to help set up," she said. I grabbed Amber's new leather jacket off the chair. When Amber arrived, I was wearing it. "Is that my jacket?" she said, her voice getting high. "Yeah, it's so nice," I said. "Thanks for sharing. The leather is so soft." "I didn't share that. I just bought it last week." "You shared your old leather jacket with me last year, remember? The one with the broken zipper and the weird stain on the back? I figured this was the upgrade. Take it off right now." "Why?" "We share clothes. That's our thing. You established that. Remember when you announced to everyone at Thanksgiving how generous you were?" She looked at our family. Everyone was watching. "Mom, tell her to give me my jacket." Her mom looked uncomfortable. "Well, honey, you do give Jess a lot of clothes. Old clothes. Clothes I don't want. Clothes that are basically trash. And I never asked for them," I said. "But you created this dynamic where my wardrobe is apparently communal property. So I'm just participating. You told everyone I needed your help. So help me. Share that jacket." Amber's face turned bright red and I could see her mouth open and close like she was trying to find words that wouldn't come. Her mom's comment hung in the air between us and the whole family was watching now, not even pretending to look away anymore. Keith walked over from the grill area and said maybe I had a point about this whole sharing thing, that he'd been wondering about it himself. Amber looked at him like he'd just stabbed her in the back and started saying something about how it was completely different, how she was just trying to help. But Keith shook his head and said, "Help usually goes both ways." Phoebe jumped in fast, telling Keith he didn't understand, that Amber was just being generous with things she didn't need anymore. But before she could say more, Faith set down her drink and said she'd actually been thinking about this for a while now, wondering why Amber only ever shared old stuff while keeping everything nice for herself. The conversation shifted then, and I could feel it, like the ground moving under Amber's feet. Other relatives started nodding, and I heard my uncle say something to his wife about how Amber did always make a big deal about the hand-me-downs at family dinners. I adjusted the leather jacket on my shoulders and looked straight at Amber. I told her I'd keep it on, and she could have it back when she was ready to admit that her so-called generosity was really about making herself look good, while making me look like I needed charity. She stared at me and said that wasn't true, that she was just trying to help family. I said then she should be happy to share the nice stuff too, not just the garbage. She pressed her lips together and crossed her arms, and I told her I'd return it when she was ready to have an honest conversation about what she'd been doing for years. She turned away from me and walked toward the kitchen. The party got weird after that. People split off into little groups, and I could hear them talking in low voices, glancing over at me and Amber. Mila stood near the dessert table with her eyes huge, watching everything like it was a TV show. Some relatives came up to me and patted my shoulder without saying anything. Others avoided looking at me completely. Amber stayed in the kitchen for a long time, and when she came back out, her eyes were red. I felt bad for about 2 seconds, and then remembered every single family dinner where she'd announced her donations while I sat there feeling small. I grabbed my purse and told my mom I was heading out. She asked me to stay, but I said I needed to go, and I walked out still wearing the jacket. In my car, I sat for a minute feeling this weird mix of victory and panic about what I'd just done to the family piece. My phone buzzed, and it was Mandy asking how it went. I took a selfie in the jacket and sent it with the words "Mission accomplished." She sent back 3 fire emojis and said she was proud of me. I drove home feeling shaky and kept checking my phone like someone was going to call and yell at me. The next morning, I woke up to a long text from my mom. She said I needed to return the jacket and apologize to Amber to keep the peace in the family. She said everyone was upset and Phoebe was really mad, and I'd made grandmother's birthday about drama instead of celebrating her. I read it twice and then typed back that I'd return the jacket when Amber apologized for years of treating me like a charity case in front of everyone. My mom didn't respond for an hour, and then my phone rang. It was her. I answered, and she said I'd made a scene at grandmother's birthday and embarrassed the whole family. Her voice was tight, and I could tell she'd been talking to Phoebe. I stayed calm and told her I'd been embarrassed at every single family gathering for years, while everyone praised Amber for being so generous. There was silence on the other end. Then my mom said she never thought about it that way because Amber always seemed like she was doing something nice. I told her that was exactly the problem. That Amber got all the credit for being generous while I got treated like I couldn't afford my own clothes even though I had a good job. My mom went quiet for a long moment, and I heard her breathe out slowly. She said she honestly never looked at it from my side because Amber made such a big deal about helping me build my wardrobe. I said that's because Amber controlled the story and everyone believed her version, where she was the successful cousin helping out poor Jess. My mom admitted she never questioned it, and now she felt bad. I told her the real issue was that Amber got praised for giving me trash while I sat there in clothes I'd bought myself, and nobody ever asked if I actually wanted or needed her rejects. Over the next few days, my phone blew up with texts from different family members. Faith sent me a message saying she was glad someone finally called out Amber's behavior because it had always bothered her, but she didn't know how to say anything. Phoebe sent a cold text about respecting family and not causing drama at important events. My aunt sent a neutral message asking if I was okay. Keith texted saying he thought I made my point and maybe it was time to return the jacket, but he got why I did it. I didn't respond to most of them because I didn't know what to say, and I was tired of explaining myself. At work on Monday, Jason noticed I was distracted during our team meeting. Afterward, he asked what was wrong, and I told him the whole story about Amber and the hand-me-downs and the leather jacket. He laughed and said his sister did the exact same thing with her old clothes to their younger cousin, always making this big show of being generous while giving away stuff that was falling apart. He said his cousin finally snapped and donated everything to Goodwill, and sent his sister the receipt. I felt better knowing I wasn't the only person dealing with this weird family dynamic where someone gets praised for basically insulting you. The next morning, I checked my phone while getting ready for work, and saw that Amber had posted something on social media around midnight. The post said something about how some people don't appreciate kindness and take advantage of generosity, and how it hurts when family turns on you. She didn't name me directly, but it was obvious who she meant. I scrolled through the comments and saw that several aunts and cousins had liked it and left supportive messages. Phoebe commented with a heart emoji and wrote that some people just don't understand gratitude. My stomach felt tight seeing how many family members were siding with Amber without even asking for my side of the story. I put my phone down and finished getting dressed, trying not to let it bother me even though it did. Around lunchtime at work, my phone rang with a number I recognized as Keith. I stepped outside the office to take the call, and he got right to the point. He said he saw what happened at grandmother's party and wanted me to know he understood where I was coming from. Keith told me he'd been watching Amber do this stuff for years, and it always bothered him how she made such a big production out of giving people her trash. He said my method was pretty dramatic, but sometimes you have to make a scene to get people to pay attention. Then he suggested I keep the jacket for about a week to really drive the point home, and after that return it to show I'm the bigger person. I thanked him for calling and told him I'd think about his advice. After work, I went home and looked at the leather jacket hanging in my closet. I thought about what Keith said about being the bigger person, and returning it after making my point. but I wasn't ready to do that yet. The jacket was nice, and I was still angry about years of being treated like I needed charity. The next day, I wore the jacket to work over a black dress I'd bought myself. 3 different people complimented me on it during the morning meeting. One woman from accounting asked where I got it, and I told her it was from my cousin. She said I had a generous cousin, and I just smiled without correcting her. Sitting at my desk later, I felt both satisfied that I looked good in the jacket and guilty for keeping something that wasn't mine. When I got home that evening, Mandy was making dinner and asked how my day went. I told her about the compliments on the jacket and how conflicted I felt about the whole situation. She put down her spatula and said I should document everything Amber had given me over the years. Mandy suggested I take photos of all the worn-out garbage still sitting in my closet and create a visual display of the so-called generosity everyone had been praising. She said seeing it all laid out would make it impossible for anyone to deny how bad the stuff actually was. I went to my closet and started pulling out items Amber had given me. I took photos of the sweater with holes in both armpits. I photographed the jeans with the inner thighs worn so thin you could see through them. I got shots of the shoes with soles peeling off and the purse with a broken zipper and stained lining. Each photo made me more certain I'd been right to take the jacket. The weekend passed quietly, and then exactly 1 week after grandmother's party, someone knocked hard on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Phoebe standing there with her arms crossed. My heart started beating faster, but I opened the door. She didn't even say hello, just demanded I give her the jacket right now. I told her if Amber wanted the jacket back, she needed to come talk to me herself about everything that had been happening. Phoebe's face got red, and she said Amber was too upset to face me after how I humiliated her in front of the whole family. I stayed calm and told Phoebe that Amber could text me or call me when she was ready to have an actual conversation about the pattern of behavior over the past few years. Phoebe stepped closer and said I was being cruel and unreasonable. She told me Amber had been crying for days about how I embarrassed her at grandmother's birthday. She said Amber felt betrayed by someone she'd tried so hard to help and support. I felt my hands start to shake, but I kept my voice steady. I told Phoebe I'd been humiliated at every single family event for years while everyone praised Amber for giving me garbage. But nobody cared about my feelings back then. Phoebe opened her mouth to argue, but I said I was done with this conversation and closed the door. I heard her stand there for a minute before her footsteps went down the hallway. After she left, I sat on the couch feeling shaky and upset. My hands were still trembling, and I felt like I might cry even though I didn't want to. Confronting family was so much harder than I'd expected it to be. Mandy came out of her room and saw my face. She didn't ask what happened, just went to the kitchen and made me tea. When she brought it over, she sat next to me and reminded me I wasn't wrong for wanting to be treated with respect. She said setting boundaries with family is hard, but it doesn't make the boundaries any less necessary. 2 weeks went by with no contact from Amber. I wore the jacket a few more times, and each time I felt a little less guilty about it. Then Faith texted me asking if we could meet for coffee. At the coffee shop, she told me she'd been hearing things through the family gossip network. Faith said Amber was telling everyone I'd stolen her jacket and refused to give it back. She said Amber wasn't acknowledging any of her own behavior and was playing the victim to anyone who would listen. According to Faith, Amber's story was that she'd always tried to help me, and I'd repaid her kindness by taking her things. Hearing this made me so angry I could feel heat rising in my face. After 3 years of accepting her garbage without complaint, after staying quiet while she made me look pathetic at family dinners, she was still controlling the story and making herself look good. I thanked Faith for telling me and went home more determined than ever to make people see the truth. That evening, I spread out all the items Amber had given me across my living room floor. I arranged them carefully and took photos from different angles. Then I used my laptop to create a collage showing everything together with close-up shots of the worst damage. The pilled fabric, the permanent stains, the broken zippers, the separated shoe soles. Looking at the finished collage, I felt vindicated. This was the real evidence of Amber's generosity. This was what everyone had been praising her for while she made me feel small. I saved the collage and attached it to a message to my mom. I wrote that this was what Amber's help had actually looked like for the past 3 years. I explained these were the items everyone had congratulated her for giving me, while I sat there in clothes I'd bought with my own money. I said this was what I'd stayed silent about while Amber got credit for being such a thoughtful cousin. I hit send before I could second-guess myself and then stared at my phone. An hour passed with no response. Then another hour. I checked to make sure the message had delivered, and it had. My mom had read it but wasn't replying. I put my phone face down on the coffee table and tried to watch TV but couldn't focus on anything. Around midnight, my phone finally rang, and I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. My mom's voice came through shaky and thick like she'd been crying for a while. She said she had no idea the items were in such bad condition because Amber always made them sound like nice things she was passing along. I told her that's because Amber is good at controlling the story, making herself look generous while handing me actual garbage. My mom went quiet for a minute, and I could hear her breathing hard like she was trying not to cry more. She said she'd been thinking about all the times she praised Amber at family gatherings and realizes now how that must have made me feel. She apologized for not seeing what was really happening, for making me sit there while everyone acted like I needed charity. I felt my throat get tight, but I didn't want to cry, so I just said it's okay. I know she didn't mean to hurt me. My mom said she's going to talk to Phoebe about this whole situation. I told her not to because it needs to come from Amber directly, that if Amber can't admit what she did, then we don't have anything to fix. My mom tried to argue, but I said I was serious about this, that Amber needed to face what she'd done without her mom running interference. We talked for another 20 minutes about other stuff, and when we hung up, I felt a little better, but also more nervous about what would happen next. The following weekend was another family gathering at Keith's house, and I spent the whole week dreading it. Part of me wanted to skip it entirely, but hiding would make it seem like I was ashamed of what I'd done. I decided to go, and I wore the leather jacket on purpose, wanting to make it clear I wasn't backing down. When I pulled up to Keith's house, I sat in my car for a few minutes trying to calm my nerves. I could see other cars already there, including Amber's silver sedan parked right by the front door. I took a deep breath and walked up to the house with the jacket feeling heavy on my shoulders. Keith opened the door and his smile looked forced, like he was trying too hard to act normal. When I walked into the living room, the atmosphere was so tense I could feel it pressing against my skin. Several relatives were standing around talking, but they avoided making eye contact with me when I came in. Amber was already there sitting on the couch next to her mom, and when she saw me in the jacket, her face went completely pale. She stared at me for a long moment, and I stared back, neither of us looking away first. Faith came over immediately and said in a loud voice that my jacket looked amazing on me. She asked where I got it, and I said it was a gift from Amber. Faith smiled in a way that told me she knew exactly what was happening and approved completely. Amber stood up fast and walked toward the kitchen without saying anything to anyone. Phoebe gave me a cold look before following her daughter out of the room. I went to get a drink from the cooler outside, and when I came back in, Amber was waiting by the hallway. She pulled me aside into the empty den and asked in a tight, angry voice when I was planning to return her property. I told her I was planning to keep wearing it until she's ready to have an honest talk about the past few years. She said I was being petty and mean, that I was acting like a child over a stupid jacket. I responded that I was being exactly as generous as she's always been, giving her something she doesn't want, and acting like I'm doing her a favor. Her face went red and she opened her mouth to say something else, but Keith's voice called out that dinner was ready. The timing cut off our fight before it could get worse. At the table, I noticed right away that the seating had been planned to keep Amber and me separated. She was at one end near her mom, and I was at the other end near Faith. During dinner, Phoebe made pointed comments about family loyalty and respecting each other's things. She said family should support each other, not tear each other down over material objects. Faith countered with comments about respecting each other's feelings and not treating people as charity cases. She said real generosity doesn't require an audience or constant praise. The table got quiet and uncomfortable with everyone looking down at their plates and pretending to focus on eating. Keith tried to change the subject by asking about someone's new job, but the tension stayed thick in the air. I kept the jacket on through the whole meal, even though the house was warm, and I was starting to sweat under the leather. Mila looked up from her plate with her fork halfway to her mouth and asked why everyone was being so weird tonight. The table went completely silent. Keith cleared his throat really loud and started asking someone about their new car in this forced, cheerful voice that made it obvious he was trying to change the subject. Everyone jumped on the new topic like they were grateful for the escape, but the tension stayed thick in the air. I could feel people sneaking glances at me and Amber throughout the rest of the meal. Phoebe kept her face tight and disapproving every time she looked in my direction. Faith caught my eye once and gave me a tiny supportive nod. The jacket felt heavier with each passing minute and sweat was running down my back, but I refused to take it off. After we finished eating and people started clearing plates, Alma came over and touched my elbow. She said quietly that she needed to talk to me and Amber in Keith's study right now, because this family tension was affecting everyone, and we needed to work it out. I followed her down the hallway, and Amber came behind us looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Keith's study was small with dark wood furniture and shelves full of old books. Alma closed the door behind us and turned to face both of us. Amber immediately crossed her arms over her chest and stared at the floor instead of looking at me. I stood there still wearing the leather jacket, feeling the sweat cooling on my skin in the air-conditioned room. Alma looked at Amber and asked her directly why she only gave me used items while keeping all the new things for herself. Amber uncrossed her arms and recrossed them tighter. She said she thought I needed help building my wardrobe since I was younger and just starting my career. Her voice had this defensive edge to it, like she was trying to justify something she knew didn't sound right. I could see her jaw was clenched and she still wouldn't make eye contact with either of us. Alma waited for more, but Amber didn't add anything else. The silence in the study felt heavy and uncomfortable. I spoke up and pointed out that I'd been working in marketing for 3 years now. I made decent money and had never once asked Amber for help with clothes or anything else. Amber's face went a little pale and she finally looked up at me. She opened her mouth and then closed it again. After a long pause, she admitted in a quieter voice that she just assumed I needed help, because I was younger than her. The way she said it made it clear she was realizing how weak that reasoning sounded. I watched her fidget with the hem of her shirt and shift her weight from one foot to the other. Alma turned back to Amber and asked why she made such a big deal of announcing her generosity at every single family gathering if this was really just about helping me. Amber's face flushed red and she started talking faster. She said she didn't make a big deal about it. She just mentioned it sometimes. Alma raised her eyebrows and said it was more than sometimes. Amber got more defensive and her voice went up higher. She insisted she was just trying to be helpful and didn't understand why everyone was making her feel like the bad guy. Her hands were moving around as she talked, and I could tell she was getting worked up. I told Amber that her so-called help made me feel small and incompetent in front of the whole family. I said it was like she was announcing to everyone that I couldn't take care of myself or afford my own clothes. Amber stopped moving and stared at me with this genuinely surprised expression on her face. She said she never meant it that way at all. Her voice cracked a little when she said it. I could see tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She looked confused, like she really hadn't considered how her actions came across to me. Amber took a shaky breath and admitted something that surprised me. She said she liked feeling like the successful older cousin who had her life together enough to help other people. The words came out slowly, like she was figuring out her own motivations as she spoke. I looked at her and told her she built that image of herself by making me look like I didn't have my life together. She flinched when I said it, but didn't argue back. Her arms dropped to her sides and she looked smaller somehow, less sure of herself than I'd ever seen her. Alma asked Amber if she could understand why I felt humiliated when she announced her donations at family dinners, while I sat right there in clothes I'd bought with my own paycheck. Amber's face crumpled and tears started running down her cheeks. She said she never thought about it from my perspective before. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She wiped at her face with the back of her hand and kept saying she was sorry. She just never thought about how it made me feel. I watched her cry and felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and guilt. I told Amber I would return the jacket, but I needed something from her first. She looked up at me with wet eyes. I said she needed to acknowledge to the family that her behavior was about making herself look good, not about actually helping me. Amber hesitated and looked at Alma, then back at me. She bit her lip and was quiet for what felt like forever. Then she nodded slowly and said, "Okay," in a small voice. She agreed she would do it. Alma looked relieved and put a hand on each of our shoulders. We walked back out to the family gathering together. Most people were in the living room now having coffee and dessert. Amber took a deep breath and asked for everyone's attention in a voice that shook slightly. The room went quiet and everyone turned to look at her. She apologized for making me uncomfortable with her hand-me-downs over the years. She said she should have asked if I wanted them instead of just assuming I needed help. Her voice got stronger as she spoke. She admitted she made a mistake in how she handled things. It wasn't the full acknowledgement I wanted about making herself look good, but it was something real in front of everyone. I reached up and unzipped the leather jacket, slid it off my shoulders, and handed it back to her. I thanked her for the apology and told her I hoped things could be different going forward. Faith walked over right away and wrapped her arms around me in a tight hug. She leaned close to my ear and whispered that she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Keith caught my eye from across the room and gave me a firm nod of approval. The rest of the gathering felt strange and uncomfortable, but the worst of the tension had lifted. People started talking in small groups again instead of standing around in awkward silence. Phoebe stayed cool toward me for the rest of the evening, but she wasn't openly hostile anymore. She didn't smile at me, but she also didn't glare or make cutting remarks. Over the next month, the family slowly adjusted to the new situation. Amber stopped showing up at gatherings with garbage bags full of old clothes. When we saw each other at family events, we were polite but kept our distance. We'd say hello and make small talk about work or the weather, but we didn't seek each other out. I felt relieved not to dread every family gathering anymore. One Saturday afternoon, I pulled all of Amber's old hand-me-downs out of my closet and packed them into donation bags. I drove to the charity drop-off center and handed over 6 full bags of stretched sweaters, stained shirts, worn shoes, and broken accessories. The worker gave me a receipt and I took a photo of it on my phone. When I got home, Mandy looked at the photo and laughed. She said I should send the receipt to Amber so she could claim the tax deduction since they were technically her donations. I didn't send it, but the joke made me feel lighter about the whole thing. Thanksgiving rolled around a few months later, and I walked into Keith's house feeling nervous. Amber was already there in the living room talking to relatives. She was wearing the leather jacket. I felt a small pang when I saw it, but mostly I felt relief that the whole situation was behind us. She glanced at my outfit but didn't make any comments. I didn't comment on what she was wearing either. We moved around each other all evening without incident. A week after Thanksgiving, Faith called me and asked if I wanted to meet for lunch. We met at a cafe near her office and talked for 2 hours. She told me she'd always thought Amber's behavior was rude and looked down on me, but she never knew how to bring it up without causing family drama. She said watching me stand up for myself made her realize she needed to be more direct with family members when they crossed lines. We started meeting for lunch every few weeks after that. At Christmas dinner, my mom made a point of telling everyone about a big project I'd finished at work. She talked about my accomplishments without comparing me to Amber or anyone else. It felt good to be recognized for what I'd actually done, instead of being seen as someone who needed help. On Monday morning at work, Jason stopped by my desk with his coffee. He asked how the family drama had turned out. I told him it wasn't perfect, but things were better than before. He nodded and said, "Sometimes you have to shake things up to get real respect from people." 3 months after the jacket incident, Amber texted me asking if I wanted to meet for coffee. I was surprised but agreed. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments on a Saturday morning. She apologized again, and this time she went deeper. She admitted she'd been dealing with her own worries about getting older and feeling like she was losing her place in the family. She said giving me things made her feel important and needed. I told her I understood feeling insecure about getting older and losing your place in the family, but building yourself up by putting other people down wasn't the answer. She nodded and wiped her eyes with a napkin. She said she'd been thinking a lot lately about how she treated people, not just me, but others too. She admitted she used the hand-me-downs to feel superior, to have something to offer that made her seem generous and successful. I stirred my coffee and watched her face. She looked tired and smaller somehow, like admitting all this had deflated something in her. She asked if we could start over with a clean slate, forget everything that happened, and just be cousins again. I put down my cup and told her I was willing to try, but the relationship would take time to rebuild. I couldn't just pretend years of feeling small and embarrassed never happened. She looked disappointed but said she understood. She didn't push for us to be close right away or act like one conversation fixed everything. We finished our coffee and talked about work and other safe topics. When we left the shop, she hugged me briefly and said she'd see me at the next family thing. Months passed and family gatherings got easier. We were polite to each other, made small talk, but kept some distance. At Christmas, I walked into Keith's house nervous about seeing everyone. The decorations were up and the whole family was there. Amber was already in the living room when I arrived. She saw me and walked over holding a wrapped box. She handed it to me and said it was just something small. My stomach tightened as I took it. I unwrapped it slowly, half expecting another bag of her old stuff disguised as a gift. Inside was a nice scarf, still in the store packaging with all the tags attached. The price tag showed she'd paid full price at a department store. I looked up at her and genuinely thanked her for it. She smiled. A real smile, not the tight fake one from before, and said she was trying to do better. It was a small thing, just a scarf, but it felt like real progress. She didn't make a big announcement to the family about giving it to me. She didn't tell everyone how generous she was being. She just gave me a gift like normal cousins do. That week, I met Mandy for dinner at our favorite restaurant. I told her about the scarf and the coffee meeting with Amber. Mandy said I should write about the whole experience because other people definitely dealt with family members who disguised put-downs as generosity. She said patronizing relatives were everywhere, and people needed to hear how to set boundaries. I thought about it on the drive home. I considered starting a blog about family boundary setting, about standing up to relatives who made you feel small while acting like they were helping you. I made notes on my phone about what I'd write, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to put it all out there publicly. 6 months after the initial confrontation, I got a text from Amber inviting me to her house for her birthday dinner. I stared at the message for a long time. Going to her house felt like a big step, like accepting her back into my life in a real way. I was nervous about it, but decided to go as a sign of moving forward. I bought her a nice gift, not expensive but thoughtful, and drove to her place on Saturday evening. Her house was full of people when I arrived, mostly her friends from work and a few family members. Amber answered the door and hugged me, thanking me for coming. Throughout the evening, she introduced me to her friends as her cousin who worked in marketing, highlighting my job and asking me questions about recent campaigns I'd worked on. There were no condescending comments, no mentions of how she'd helped me build my wardrobe, no references to all the things she'd given me over the years. It felt like genuine respect for the first time. Her friends asked me about my work and treated me like a peer, not like someone who needed assistance. Phoebe was there too, and she was warmer to me than she'd been in months. After dinner, she pulled me aside in the kitchen while people were getting dessert. She said she was glad Amber and I had worked things out. She admitted she'd enabled Amber's behavior by always defending her and making excuses. She said watching me stand up for myself made her realize she'd been protecting Amber from consequences instead of helping her grow. I told her I appreciated that, and I knew it wasn't easy to admit. We stood there awkwardly for a moment, then she hugged me and went back to the party. A year after the jacket incident, family gatherings felt comfortable again. I'd established clear boundaries that everyone respected. Amber didn't give me her old things anymore. She didn't make announcements about helping me. She didn't comment on what I wore or try to take credit for my clothes. We weren't best friends and probably never would be, but we had a functional, respectful relationship. We could sit at the same table, have normal conversations, and exist in the same family without tension. At a family barbecue at Keith's house that summer, I wore a new dress I'd bought myself the week before. Mila came up to me by the food table and complimented it, asking where I got it. I told her the name of the store and mentioned the price because I was proud of finding it on sale. Amber was standing nearby getting a drink and she overheard. She turned and looked at my dress, then nodded and said it looked great on me. No comments about how it looked like something she used to own. No suggestions that she'd given me something similar. No attempts to take credit or make it about her generosity. Just a genuine compliment between cousins who finally understood each other. I smiled and thanked her, and we both went back to our conversations. The whole family was there, eating and talking and laughing like families do. No one was walking on eggshells. No one was avoiding topics or managing tensions. It felt normal and easy, the way family gatherings should feel. I got a plate of food and sat with Faith and some other cousins, and for the first time in years, I didn't dread being there.